Hello, friends. Welcome to the live stream. I'm Joshua Koyapalai,
And I'm Josiah Koyapalai.
and this is uh, my last comic project, Walby's Road Trip Adventure. And my next comic project is a story that my brother Josiah wrote, and it's called Caden and the Yak Thieves, and it takes place in Siberia, and it's about the Mongol Empire and like nomadic clans, or a nomadic clan that is struggling with some yak thieves, and so it's about some of the herdsmen.
Right, in the Mongol Empire.
And so I'll show you the last page that before the one that I'm working on. And also, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments, and Josiah will read them and will answer any questions.
Yeah.
So I'll switch over here, and this is the page that I'm going to be inking.
Right.
But this is the last page.
The last fully finished, fully colored and shaded and
so just
complete
to
page.
introduce where we are.
Yeah.
We're in this Evink village, and it's the native.
It's the native
Siberian.
the native people in Siberia.
Yeah. And they're reindeer. They raise reindeer.
Right. Because the Mongols are nomads and they would travel to other places. So they would travel to this part of Siberia where they're not the native people, right? The native people are the Evinks. These.
So could you just give a little bit of
Yeah, so they live similar to natives in the Native Americans in the United States. They have teepees, wigwams, kind of like structures with bark, and they raise reindeer for meat, but mostly for hides, for the fur and for the the skins and stuff.
Yeah.
And they herd the reindeer. And they also use the reindeer as their mount. They ride the reindeer.
So
and
what's happening here is these three characters here are the main characters of the story. Here's Caden and Ublek and Batar, and they're the Mongol characters coming into this Evink village.
they're looking for their yaks that were stolen.
And so anyways, what happens is they come here and they find these yaks, and this Evink man Chaikal says that these yaks belong to him and that he didn't steal them from them. And so on this page they get into an argument
Because they recognize the yaks. They're definitely their yaks. He says he bought them.
and so I'll start working on this page.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be using my pen on my pen tablet and drawing on a layer above these blue lines. So I'll start out with this character here, Batar.
Right.
Caden's brother, Batar.
Yeah. Older brother.
And it's interesting to learn how to, as I worked on this comic, I got more familiar with the characters, and I think that's something that happens. You have to do a lot of practices, just in your sketchbook, and figure out how the characters look, get to know them more.
Yeah.
And look at other look at the characters, look at people from the place that where your character's from. I looked at the Mongol, different.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you can find it on the internet, lots of
Yeah.
Mongol clothing, Mongolian style hats and coats and stuff. And we kind of designed the characters around their character, who they are. Caden is very simple. He wears a very simple hat that's just sheep hide, maybe, that's woven into or sewn into a hat, whereas Batar wears a very sophisticated fur hat with ermine fur or some kind of black fur, which is more expensive, right? and he also wears a very shiny black silk deal, where Caden probably wears a wool, or yeah, wool that would be their more common form of fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Silk would be imported from China, so it'd be more expensive. But they did trade with Chinese merchants. And then Ublek's hat, we kind of picked one that sort of fits his form, right? Like if it
Yeah.
kind of matches, it accentuates him, right? Accentuates his.
Mm-hmm.
It's also another simple fur
Plus,
or
the characters
wool hat.
change over time,
Yeah.
but you kind of figure out like what the.
Well, I mean, they change between the snow. You're talking about
Well,
between.
I mean they don't. They change over time of creating it and fleshing out what you want the character to look like. So
Right.
like this is how we settled for
Yeah,
for Batar. We have him with a real like defined jaw
Yeah.
and cheekbones
Yeah, we
and
want
like
to make
a sharp look to him with a little goatee and
a mustache.
like a nice looking mustache like it. So I'll show
Initially,
you
we had him like with stubble, right?
yeah.
In the early
So let me find
early drawings.
an earlier Batar drawing here.
That's a okay. I think that one's the same.
Okay, so
Yes.
okay, so this is some things have changed about this, but let me find an earlier. Yeah, so I have an earlier drawing of all the characters of these three boys.
Why don't you after that go to the colored, the last one that you colored? You know, the
Yeah.
drawing. No, I mean,
So,
oh yeah, that's
well.
good.
This is an earlier drawing of the three boys.
Yeah. So before he just kind of had stubble,
Mm-hmm.
but then I was saying,
And he had more of a, like the, I want to have him to have a more.
he had a more protruding forehead at this point, right?
Yeah, I'll show you like what the classic, how to make the Mongol look, like how they.
Yeah.
So their eyebrows, like, you can see it pretty clear here on Ublek as his face is facing the camera, but so their eyes are farther away and their eyebrows go in pretty close to the nose here, and they don't have a big nose.
No.
So.
And they don't have they have higher cheekbones and a wider face, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and also, not a very protruding forehead.
Yeah.
It's something you learn from drawing a whole army of Mongols in the army camp scene. Right?
Yeah. After I drew this page, let me find that. I had it down pretty well how to draw Mongolian people.
That's neat.
So this is the bringing up this page of the Mongol army camp in an earlier scene.
And that's a style of hat that you see. It's common in Mongolia today, even because their clothes really haven't changed much.
Mm-hmm.
They still wear the same clothes that they wore in those days.
Okay. So yeah, here's the big Mongol army camp.
Yeah.
And
the sergeant is speaking to his troops, or the colonel, or the I can't remember what we call him. Yeah, colonel.
Yeah.
And as you can see, there's a lot of different styles of armor and different weaponry and different headgear and stuff.
And different, facial features too, because
that's one thing I was quite impressed with this is that there's so many different kinds of like faces. They don't all look the same,
They have a lot of different like styles of not only clothes but like haircuts that really like
and
this
hair colors even if you have a person with red hair that is
like this guy here is basically this is Ublek's haircut basically.
Right. Yeah.
And
that's a type of haircut that you'll see even today. People in Mongolia will have it, and also people in Russia, because the Mongols invaded Russia in this time, and of course now they have their independence. But like in the 13th century, Mongols went west and took over Russia and other some places in Europe as well. And in the 14th century, a lot of those countries rebelled back and took their independence. So, but you still see some influences of Mongolian culture on in Russia, like Mongolian barbecue, and a little things. There's probably also genetic connections. There's a lot of times the noble families in Russia would marry into the Mongolian family, so there'd be. But this is about Siberia before Russia was. It used to be Siberia wasn't always like part of Russia. Like nowadays, Russia is a very enormous country and it has Siberia and other parts of some of Europe. It has like the Caucasus and all so it goes all the way from Eastern Europe all the way to like East Asia, right? But that only happened later in history, in like the 15 or the 1600s. Russia conquered west, and they went east, I guess. They went east and conquered all the way from all the way into Siberia. So this is before all that happened. So this to be clear, there wouldn't be Russians in Siberia at that point. Nowadays, you go to Siberia, you'll find a large population of Russian people, ethnically Russian people. But this is before all that. And one interesting thing is the mouth harp, in the...
Yeah, so Chaikal here is one of the evinks.
You can see it better in the other picture.
Yeah.
Now, when people think of the mouth harp, at least I tend to think of like the cowboys, right? That playing a mouth harp, mouth organ. A juice harp is another name for it.
A jaw harp, right?
Yeah, but it turns out it is actually from Siberia. That's where it was invented.
Yeah. So this is a picture of
It says, despite the colloquial name, the Jew's harp most likely originated in Siberia, specifically in or around the Altai Mountains, and is Turkic in origin. Turkic people are a race of nomadic people. There's a lot of different Turkic races, in around that area.
Here's like a example of one.
Yeah. Yeah, so it dates back to. So it looks like it says it's the earliest evidence of a jaw harp in China and Southwest Asia dates back to 400 BCE, or 400 years before Christ, so a long time ago. And it traveled throughout Eurasia along the Silk Route. The first evidence of the jaw harp in Europe dates back to around 1200 AD.
So it's just another one of those cowboy type things that happen in this.
A lot of similarities between the cowboys and the Mongols, actually, even more. So what you're doing here is you're inking. Oh, so this is the actual inking step.
Yeah. So
okay.
This is the final.
So this is the more on the final page. Straight lines, right? That have to look.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And.
So how do you know how to go in between? Like if you're gonna draw that hand, for instance. How do you?
Well, yeah. So, this is just the blue lines are a rough sketch.
Right. And
it doesn't matter as much for some things like the natural things like trees. That is like something that you don't. They look natural, so the lines would be a natural thing. But like for people's faces, it's pretty precise. Like you have to do it exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where this is where the multiple layers helps a lot to get the lines exactly right. So like the little difference here matters a lot.
Yeah.
Like where the final lines go.
Right.
For natural stuff like trees, a little bit off doesn't matter that much.
So you have a layer behind this with trees and stuff? Is that what you're saying? What is this picture gonna?
I mean, like or like this wood here,
Yeah.
Like this line being a little bit off,
Oh yeah,
it's a natural look, but for something like
someone's face,
Batar's nose, can't be off a little bit.
No.
Yeah, so that's why that's where the multiple layers and inking over helps a lot.
Yeah.
And so that is actually
You got some neat people over there.
2 layers of the draft.
Okay.
So it starts off with, this is a really rough drawing of the just the layout of the scene, placing everyone in the places they need to go.
I bet I could do that. Looks pretty easy. I mean, just really.
And then the next one is refining the details,
right?
And then the ink, and then the color, shadows. After that.
Yeah. So then you got some interesting characters appearing in the background over there.
Yeah. So these are some
more Avink natives. You got like a girl, and they have these they have this kind of headband with like these cottony kind of fur balls that are on their ears.
Yeah.
And then we've got like an elder over there with he's going with he got like the reindeer antlers on his head, and a drum.
In case he needs to play the drums.
Yeah.
So, but like the so I just drew some characters from just pictures I saw of like the Avink village.
Yeah. And luckily, even to this day, things really haven't changed much.
Yeah.
With the Avinks, you know,
they still live in those houses.
Yeah, they still live in the
teepees.
In the bark teepees, and they still raise reindeer. So, it's not so hard to find examples of what things look like. Although it is kind of hard to find written history. Like if you want to know where were they at a certain time, like what things actually happened, there's a lot less written history in this part of the world. In Europe, they're very good with writing things down. You know, in China, they were good with writing stuff, drawing pictures. Persia, all those countries, all those settled countries.
They would mostly do like, they had carvings and stuff, right?
Yes. They would have the Avinks would have wooden carvings, stone carvings. The Mongols would make stone carvings. That's really the only permanent evidence that we find is in stone carvings. But they didn't write, they didn't draw. Whenever you find a drawing of the Mongols, it's always either a European, Persian, or Chinese drawing. And that's one of the difficult things is like you got to compare, see what's similar. Like I've done that kind of research. Like I look at the pictures and see what kind of things are similar. It's interesting between them.
Like most of the Mongol most of the Mongol pictures that we get are from like modern recreations, right?
Yeah, a lot of the pictures that you use for reference are from that. But I like to go back to the old Chinese drawings and the old Persian drawings, and they have the same. They wear the deal like Caden wears, the same kind of. They wear the fur hats like that. And interestingly, one of the most common types of hat is like a wide brim cowboy hat. That just looks just like a cowboy hat. And they also wear a cowboy belt with a big golden belt buckle.
Yeah. And
cowboy boots. Their kit looks a lot like cowboy clothes.
Yeah, that's what Bashar wears.
Only is in this part of the story, it's cold right now, so they wear more of the winter kind of gear.
Yeah.
Winter hats. But the belt buckle is very common. But Caden wears a sash. Like the belt buckle is kind of a more sophisticated thing, so it makes sense to have Batar wearing it, right? And he just wears a simple, just fabric sash that's just tied around his waist. So in this scene, they're arguing about where the yaks came from, right? Like
yeah. And Chaikal says that he bought it from some honest herdsmen. He bought them from the.
He bought them from the rustlers, actually, or they think.
Yeah, because they
figured they asked him in the next page right there, like, when did you buy these yaks?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this day, yesterday, morning or something. And then he said, oh, that's when our yaks were stolen, so it's got to be them. Oobleck's just kind of oblivious to everything going on. It just kind of
yeah.
That's sort of his character, right? A little bumbling and carefree but mysterious also.
Yeah. And so, of course, this is something in the story that is happening to them a lot, is they're kind of running into these roadblocks,
Right.
to
Yeah.
where
In the previous
the last scene.
scenes, there was the merchants.
Mm-hmm.
They ran into the merchants. They thought they had their yaks because they had a big pile of skins. They thought, oh, these are our yak skins, and they said, no, it's not yak, it's reindeer and ermine
Mink.
and different things. And they said, but we did see some yaks in the village over there, in the Evink village, so they're going over here now, and they find the yaks. So
And then they run into Chaikal, who's another roadblock, because he's saying that they can't take their yaks.
he paid good money for them, so he doesn't, just because they were stolen, it's not his fault. And then they get into a big argument. Is that on this page?
That's on the next page.
Oh, okay.
Well, they start arguing on this page, and
Yeah.
So, but that's one of the things that is important in stories is conflict.
Yeah.
Because there's the main character has to have a goal,
Right.
and you can't just let the character get the goal right away.
No.
Get whatever he wants. There needs to be conflict.
Right.
And that's what drives the story forwards and gives it different scenarios.
Yeah, and the conflict should be geared around what your character's weakness is, I'd say, right? Like if you had a story about someone who's very shy, then you'd want their conflict to be they're thrown into a situation where they have to deal with a lot of people. Like they just inherited a mansion and they have all these people who are trying to take advantage of them. You wouldn't want to do a story where they're like on an island all by themselves.
Yeah.
Because that's not their conflict. They would do great in that situation.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you take someone who's like a social butterfly and they want to talk to everyone and they want attention, put them on a strand them on an island, on an abandoned island, then you have a story, So I'd say with Batar, his conflict is, he wants to travel the world and see things and live a less mundane life. And temptations keep popping up to go and travel the world. The merchants offer that. And then doesn't want him to. Caden, of course, doesn't want him to leave, and that's his conflict, right? But you're also talking about.
There's also layers of conflict, because there's conflict between, Caden and Batar, as
But of course, there's just this general conflict of trying to find the yaks, right? Like, that's a. And of course, that puts their skills to the test because, right now they're not the most brilliant trackers, and they have to learn, sort of. They certainly Caden isn't. Batar's more experienced, but Caden's not so good at his job, and you'll see later how his incompetence sort of messes things up for them.
Yeah.
But I don't want to spoil too much.
But it's important that all the characters have their own desires, and goals.
Ublex is just food, basically, right?
Yeah. Ublex and Tashi both have that goal.
Yeah.
I think.
It's neat, the buckskin shirt. It's really cool.
And this is one of the. Yeah, it was interesting to draw these a different set of characters.
Yeah.
With these.
It's really different, right? It's really different than the Mongolian.
Yeah.
Clothes.
It's more of a plain look to their clothes. They have these.
Yeah, it tends to be more like leather with. If there is color, it's kind of sparingly used.
They basically use reindeer.
Yeah, they use reindeer skins, right?
Yeah.
And probably leather that they make, and
they have
not like soft leather, not like shiny black leather like the Mongols wear, right?
Yeah.
It's probably tanned in a different way, or it's rawhide maybe, or something. There's different types of leather.
They also have tassels on there.
Yeah, that's cool. That looks just like like a Davy Crockett kind of.
Yeah.
Which came from the natives, of course.
Yeah.
And the natives and the Evinks are related. They're the natives of North America and the Evinks we talked about last week, or the week before, I guess. That they're there's a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And the color that they do have in their clothes is a little more sparingly used, like a little bit of green and red, or
Mm-hmm.
blue and red dye, like
Mm-hmm.
to make more intricate patterns. Whereas the Mongols wear large amounts, just whole bolts of, they use their fabric. It probably comes in a whole bolt of fabric of one color, and they just use that one color for their whole coat.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty like uh just practical. It's more
Mm-hmm.
practical
Yeah.
is the Mongolian clothes. Like, whereas there's a lot of more ceremony and meaning behind the Avink clothes. I don't know what it is exactly, but it has more tradition right behind it. You can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Mongols are just geared towards writing, and it's geared towards the fact that you have to have something that keeps the wind, keeps you warm while you're riding.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they wear trousers, and that's important for riding because you got to be able to sit on the saddle. And
Mm-hmm.
every culture that rides horses, like they invent trousers.
Mm.
A lot of the sedentary cultures didn't use them. They would wear more like tunics and long stockings.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone in the Mongol Empire would wear pants like that. I think the Vinks would wear a similar thing. They wouldn't wear trousers. They would wear just long tunics, long coats, and stockings that go and like boots or moccasins and leggings. Yeah, but I'm glad I kind of picked them on purpose because I wanted to have something that contrasts the Mongol style of clothing.
Mm.
And probably historically at this point they would start to adopt Mongol clothing, because if you go there today, you do see a lot of, in day-to-day life, they tend to wear
Deals.
just wear deals, yeah. They don't wear these kind of ceremonial buckskin and
That's more
reindeer
of the...
skin. They only wear it for ceremonies. They wear it for like dances and
Okay.
festivals and stuff. That's a pretty typical thing you see. But sometimes, from the influence,
Mm-hmm.
like, so the Mongols came there,
Mm-hmm.
and they brought a lot of things, right? They brought like the kind of clothing and modern, well,
Yeah.
slightly moderner, I guess you could
Mm-hmm.
say, stuff. They gave them metal, like metallurgy, right? They brought them like steel tipped arrows and
Mm-hmm.
spears and stuff, because before they would use bone, right? I think he would mostly be using bone stuff, like bone arrowheads.
Mm.
Like, maybe we could just do that in the next pages when he has his
Mm-hmm.
arrowheads and stuff. It would be like bone, and also I think it would be a longer bow.
Mm.
It would be like a flat bow, which is
I
a different
see.
style than a recurve bow, like that they would wear. Yeah, I decided that they should probably not have their bows and arrows when they
Mhm.
walk in the village, because it just, like them walking in the village fully armed would look like war or something.
Yeah.
I don't think they would appreciate that.
So they... Yeah, what would the Evinks would be probably pretty... Did they have weapons and stuff? Did they...
They would. I mean, they would have. I think they would.
They have
Their
axes,
weapons
I know
would
they-
only be the practical things, right? Like, they'd be spears for hunting and bows and arrows. That's all I've ever heard of.
Mm.
They're not a very warlike people. They're not.
Mhm.
There's not a whole lot of wars, in history that they
Yeah.
fought. They're pretty. I mean, because it's one of the least. It's one of the most sparsely populated places in the world.
Mm. Were there
And-
other... Like...
Yeah, other kind of cultures. There
Yeah.
would be other. There was like, let me see what in that area. The cultures of Lake Baikal. There would be Turkic people, but again, it's one of the least the more
Aggressive.
sparsely
Oh.
populated areas of
Areas.
the world. Yeah.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of different
Why?
cultures in the area.
Is it because it's not very... Like a... Is it a hard place to live?
Yeah, because if you're living there year round, you have to live there in winter. It's super cold,
Mm.
and you have to have very specialized sort of breeds of animals to to survive in that place. You know, if you're gonna, reindeer, they would have reindeer. There are also some breeds of horses that can live in like below negative 50 degrees Celsius. It's only those animals that can survive, and only those people that can survive it, that can live there. So it's a pretty rough place. The people who live there love it though. They wouldn't live anywhere else. You have to have that kind of breed of person, or I don't know the right word, but that, you know what I mean, that kind of character, that kind of, the people who go out when it's that temperature, they go out, they enjoy it. They go outside and they enjoy that. Like I heard in that area of Lake Baikal, and even further north into like the northern Siberia, where it's just super cold, sometimes year round in some places. I mean, it can be hot actually in summer. It gets quite hot, and there's big mosquitoes, and so it's a pretty big swing, right? Because it goes from like freezing below 50 degrees Celsius. I mean, below negative 50 degrees or Fahrenheit, and they say that, like,
at that point it doesn't really even matter.
Yeah,
which one it is.
Well, actually, for them, they noticed the subtle difference. Like, they wouldn't go outside when it's below negative 40 degrees Celsius. Like anything above negative 40 degrees Celsius is like, just you go out and do things. They have markets on the streets.
Wow.
It's really funny to see. They have like the meat is just completely frozen in a market. It's like they just have big
out.
They're out in the street. It's just big frozen chunks of meat.
Wow.
Yeah, and they eat it cold.
Wow.
I know.
Raw?
Yeah, raw, cold, frozen beef, horse, and reindeer and stuff like that. It's so different. Like, it's so different than.
Still, they do that.
Yes,
still?
they still do it.
Wow. It's crazy.
And they like to. And then when it gets that hot, when it gets to negative 40 degrees Celsius, then it's time to they like to swim in the ice, just bathe in the ice. It's crazy.
I think one of my favorite things about this comic is like all the natural things.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of there's no buildings. There's lots of trees. There's lots of animals.
Right. I want to
Lots of
focus on that
outdoor
even in the later books. Yeah, lots of outdoor, lots of rugged mountains and forests and woods.
Snow. That's one of my favorite things is the snow.
So many medieval themed things take place in dungeons and castles where you're just cooped up the whole time in a small confined area. This has the wide,
which is
vast,
cool
wide
too.
open.
Which is cool. Yeah. I like to.
But it's different for a medieval. Like, this is pretty different for a medieval themed story, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. And it showed, like, you don't see that kind of rugged mountainous, like in the first scene with the rugged mountain,
like pine trees. There's not a lot.
Yeah.
And
snow and stuff. I think it's because a lot of medieval stuff is based around England, which has much more palatial, rolling green hills, like kind of like Ireland. At that time, it would be a lot more rural, of course. There wouldn't be as many urban cities, and there'd be a lot of green, grassy fields. Whereas this has a much more rugged landscape, kind of like the Northwest, like Alaska or Canada, or even Washington. It's in a similar hemisphere, part of the, of the world, and so there's a lot of the same animals, wildlife, trees, and stuff. You have elk, reindeer, of course, are also in Canada, caribou, wolverines.
Where they have elk here in
Siberia.
Elk, yeah.
The elk was one of the biggest places for hunting elk in the world right now is Lake Baikal in Siberia,
where the Lake Baikal is going to be on in a couple pages.
Yeah, but we're
really
not going
to.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful lake. It's the most clear lake in the world, probably because of the lack of pollution. It's a very pure lake, and has this, when it freezes, it's just this, like, what's that, turquoise blue ice. Yeah, it's just beautiful, and it's also one of the deepest lakes in the world. It's probably deeper than all the, like, it holds like it's the biggest freshwater reservoir in the world. It's the biggest freshwater.
Yeah, it actually is like.
Yeah.
Wow, how big? Like, it's bigger than.
It's like bigger than all the Great Lakes. It's like super deep. It's just crazy, unbelievable deep.
So then.
It's from a fissure. It's from a earth. Like, it's probably from after the flood. Like, just the earth opening up, or during the flood. And one fun fact about it is
so it goes really deep.
It goes really deep, super deep.
Wow.
and it's the only lake with it's the only freshwater uh, lake, with
Yeah.
seals.
Wow.
So the Lake Baikal seal is the only freshwater seal.
And we're gonna be showing those on.
Yeah.
We're gonna have them on the comic too.
But I think we're not going to say the name Lake Baikal because I don't.
Because it was invented later.
Yeah, I think the name came. It's tricky because every culture has a different. Different cultures around there probably have a different name.
Yeah.
I think it might be the Russian name,
Uh-huh.
but also it just sounds too much like Chaikal.
Mm.
So I don't want to call it that. I'll just call it the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they call it the lake because it's the only lake around there. It's the biggest lake.
Yeah. And then there's also a lot of ice caves there, which
Yeah.
we're going to be seeing later
Oh yeah.
in the story. And pretty ice
Yeah, formations.
Formations.
Amazing turquoise formations. It's famous for the blue we can find a picture of it, like turquoise blue ice.
Okay.
Lake Baikal. It's famous for the ice. It's famous for what the ice formations.
Let's see.
Yeah. If you just type Lake Baikal ice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Okay.
Look at that first picture. That's amazing.
Put this
Yeah.
there.
I think that first one is just the best. Yeah, wow, that's incredible. I don't know where it's like something about the you'll see it in a second, but it's like I think it comes from like the refraction of the light. It looks really amazing.
So here's like
Yeah.
pretty
Wow.
colors.
So you get crazy
So
formations
those are
like that.
That's ice, frozen and coming up out of the
Yeah.
water, right?
It'll at some point it cracks and also there's the wind making unusual patterns. It's really
Uh-huh.
amazing.
Let me find another picture of. There's this crazy big rock
Yeah.
there.
I think we're gonna show that, right?
Yeah.
Just giant rocks that jut out of the lake. They must be pretty big rocks underneath.
Sorry. Let me pull this up. Well, we'll be showing this later, but
Yeah,
yeah, this is a cool.
but it's neat
Rock
to learn
with-
about the geography of that place.
Yeah.
It's not. It's also. It looks a lot like Canada, the Northwest.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite look like the Arctic. It's not just, ice-covered tundra.
Mm-hmm.
Tundra is where it's dry, right? It's so dry that you don't get a lot of rain, and you don't get trees, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
This
This
is
place
at an
gets a
area
lot
where
of
there's
snow and
there's a lot of there's a fair amount of snow, but there's also enough rain for trees to grow.
Mm.
So there's some beautiful coniferous trees and woods also, like birch trees.
Mhm.
Like in this area, in this Avink area, you see a lot of birch trees, right? Like trees with the white bark that peels
Yeah.
off. I think they also get they cover the wigwams with large amounts of bark. So there's probably some. I'm guessing it's probably from it's probably not from a coniferous tree. It's more of a woodland kind of tree. Say. So we should talk about the Inktober
Oh yeah.
stuff coming up. When do we talk about that?
Yeah, that's in October. I'm gonna be doing a challenge called Inktober, that it was started by an artist named Jake Parker, and he did it to practice getting better at inking. And so the thing is that you do an ink drawing every day of Inktober and post it online. And so last year I used it to work on getting ready for this comic.
Mm-hmm.
And
This was before you even started drawing it, right?
yeah, and I did some animal drawings.
Nice.
Let's see here.
I think you had them there.
Yeah.
You had one of them at least.
Where is this? Oh, here. Go. To.
So that was.
So this year I'm going to be doing drawings from
Mhm.
like from the Caden and the Yak Thieves theme.
Yeah. So what kind of things are you gonna draw?
I'm going to be doing character drawings and animal drawings.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the reindeer drawing I did
Neat.
last year in October, and this is the snow leopard, and I'm going to be doing more animals because there's lots of animals in the comic. There's there's seals, wolves,
Camels.
snow leopard, camels. Yeah. And so this was the
And the domestic animals.
snow leopard drawing I did.
Yeah.
And this is a yak
Cool.
drawing. They have a neat like their saddles that because they ride on them too.
I think this might be a Tibetan yak, right?
Uh-huh.
It might be like the decorations and stuff on them
Yeah.
would be Tibetan.
And then this was a Tibetan Mastiff, which is what Tashi is too.
Yeah.
So
That'll be neat.
those were, and
these are all hand inked, right?
Yeah.
That's what Inktober is about. That's what the
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
hashtag Inktober
Yeah.
is more for. It's always for drawing real, like actual ink things, right?
I think it could be digital, but I'm using it to make drawings
Right.
for the theme of the Caden and the Yak Thieves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to be doing
So that's like
some of
30
them. I'll
drawings,
probably
right?
be doing some of them on live streams,
Yeah.
and also posting videos on YouTube of them
Cool.
and on my Patreon. And I'll be getting so last year I didn't do them every day,
Mm.
and
Or last
but-
October.
last October,
Yeah, last year.
October, but because I just decided to do some drawings that month to get ready.
Right.
But I'll hopefully be doing a lot more this year.
Yeah, we'll have to plan like each drawing, right?
Yeah,
What we're gonna do.
I'll probably be showing some of the sketches
Oh, okay.
on Patreon early on.
Yeah. Nice.
So let me get back to this page. I'm drawing a reindeer here.
So we got an enclosure and there's yaks and reindeer, right? So
Yeah.
usually these people just have the reindeer, of course.
Mm-hmm.
When the Mongols came, they started. Some of them started just riding horses. Actually, they got
Mhm.
rid of the reindeer raising because you can raise like reindeer are kind of wild. Like you can never. There's a reason people don't domesticate deer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they just don't do well in enclosures. They don't do as well in most deer, at least. Reindeer are probably a little better. You know,
Mhm.
you do have people raising them. Like there's the all over the Arctic, but as a rule, there's just even the Avinks,
Mm-hmm.
they would most of the year the reindeer would just be in a wild herd that they don't really deal with. I guess the only kind of thing they would do is protect them from wolves. So that was kind of the symbiosis. Whereas with horses and things, they'd stick much closer with them.
I mean, people still
People still raise reindeer.
and
Yeah, they do still.
They use them for riding and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not just the Avinks. There's a lot of Arctic cultures that have reindeer and caribou and stuff. There's the pretty famous one is the Laplanders in Finland, the Sami people. To this day, they also raise reindeer for riding them and stuff in Finland.
And
One interesting thing is they're really well adapted to the cold, and also like the seasons. So like in the summer, their feet are I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but like their feet are harder. Their hooves become harder
wow.
because because they they're gonna be walking on hard ground.
Yeah.
But in the winter, they have like this. Their feet become more soft and like become like snowshoes basically to
Wow.
walk, to navigate the snow, to get over the snow.
Wow.
And they can
That's
swim for a long time also, which is pretty amazing
Wow.
because they got to get across, like rivers and stuff. Like they
Wow.
have because in the summer, everything's melting and it's just like huge rivers, and they're gonna be like crossing rivers and stuff. And also, I just learned
It's
that
amazing design.
yeah, it's like they're really designed for this. it's the only reindeer where both sexes of the reindeer have antlers.
Hmm.
You know, the deers over here, you see, you know, we see here, we always see the female ones that come, you know, with their babies and stuff, and they never have antlers.
Yeah.
But the reason is because the females are alone in like the I guess then like after mating season, you know, they have their baby and they fend for themselves.
The male antlers fall off during the
Yeah, and the reason the females need to have antlers still is they need to protect themselves from the male antlers, because, you know, food is really scarce there. There's like they have to eat like moss and stuff.
They have to protect themselves from like
animals as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're the only one that doesn't. They're the only reindeer that doesn't. So the female the antlers, they stay year round, right? Because like with male deers, they cast their antlers. They lose their antlers every year, and then a new thing of it grows back. Because it's not like horns. Horns are just, they're just keratin. They're basically hair that's hardened around like a hair, like the horns on this yak. It's basically like really hardened hair. Whereas antlers are bone. They're like teeth, you know. They can fall out and then come back, grow back again. It's crazy.
Wow.
What picture did you get? Did you get that kind of hat from? Was that a particular picture, or you just kind of make?
Yeah, it's in the.
Okay.
It's one of the things you got.
Oh, okay. Let me see. It's neat. Yeah.
But
it's not in this flash drive. But
no.
Yeah, I need to find a way to organize all these pictures. Because we got a lot of I got a lot of pictures for this project, right? Like.
Yeah.
And they're all sorted into folders.
Yeah.
Reference pictures for everything. Like, you can't take anything for granted. Like, if I want to have a certain thing, like a plate or a
cup, it's not gonna just look like the cups we
use. I guess that's the really hard
they look
thing
like
about
bowls.
Right. Yeah, they're like these little
with designs on them.
That's the great thing about making a story in modern times. You don't need to worry about all that. Yeah. Anything that there is, you can just put anything in it that you have right now. This, you really have to do so much research and stuff. Sometimes you have to guess, right? You have to do some guesswork. But boy, I'm glad I'm not doing it even in an even more ancient time. Like, the 13th century is you know, old enough for me.
Yeah.
You go later, then it starts to get much easier. There's so much more records of stuff. People start writing things down more regularly.
There are probably places that were a better document.
Yes.
They're like, just there aren't much. There's no writing from the Mongols. So.
No, and a lot of the stuff you learn that you learn from about Siberia, it dates back to the 20th and 19th century. You know, or even later.
They also did
that's
face
really
paint.
Recently.
They also painted their faces like the American Indian people. The Mongols didn't do that, right? Or did they?
Do what?
Did the Mongols
like facial tattoos and painting stuff? No, they didn't do that. I don't know. I think they had a different religion. Like, a lot of people in that part of the world, a lot of the nomads, Turkic and Mongolic, they had kind of the same religion. They all worshipped the sky.
Sun, right? The sky.
Yeah, they just worshipped heaven. I see. But these people worshipped some sort of fire deity. So their rituals and culture and stuff would look different, right? It's similar to what the Native Americans in the Northwest believe in the North American natives. Whereas, because they're related, right? But the Native Americans aren't related to the Mongols. It's a different culture completely. The Mongols have this religion called Tengriism, where they worship heaven, Tengri, and it actually shows up in Turkey today. Even though they're Muslim, they have this this word Tenri, comes from Tengri, and they have this sort of this, what you call it? What's that word? Like, not stigmatism. That where, like, even though they're Muslims, they have some heretical to Muslim beliefs, because remember the Turkish people are Turks that came west, and they became Muslim. They weren't subjugated by the Muslims. They just converted to Islam. You know, and I think it's because they have such a simple religion of just, you know, it's shamanism. It's what you call, like, animism, and they know it's not a sophisticated religion, of course, so they readily converted to other religions like Christianity and Islam and Buddhism, the more sophisticated kinds of religions. Even Christianity, yeah, like there were Christian Mongols, a few.
But there were Christian, like, places around here, like where Caden's gonna go when he gets deployed.
Right.
There are Christians.
Yeah. In the next books, he'll be in the Caucasus, which is between Russia and the Middle East. It's the countries like Georgia, Armenia, and there were Eastern Orthodox Christians. It's an interesting part of the world because you have a lot of Muslim countries around them, you know, and they're basically surrounded by Islamic countries, and they're like a Christian country that's kind of holding out against it throughout history. It's kind of like Israel, right? Like they're surrounded by a lot of Muslim countries, and Arab countries, and they're not Muslim.
So
the Mongols didn't adapt to Islam for a long time because they saw it as a threat. They thought it's a dangerous, you know, because they were so, like, war, you know, Islam was spread by war, right? They would invade a country, force them to become a Muslim. If they didn't, they would make them pay some kind of tax, and they would take away all their rights, like weapons and horses and stuff. So the Muslims were against it, but eventually they started to convert to Islam when one of their leaders converted to Islam, and it just sort of set a precedent. It became more acceptable.
And is that when they kind of, the downfall of their
it created a division.
Uniqueness.
They just started becoming like the people around them, you know. They started they left their nomadic lifestyle behind, and they became like just sedentary people. And that's an interesting part of history, because you have where there's some people who say, well, that's the whole some of these people who conquered another country, their idea is like, well, we need to go conquer this country so we can have the same kind of standard of living as them, right? The kind of things they have. Whereas other people would say, no, we need to stick to our nomadic ways. That's what makes us great. Like, for instance, in history, we remember the famous Khan, Kublai Khan. He's the one who started the Ming, or the Yuan dynasty in China. He's the Mongol Khan. He's the grandson of Genghis Khan, who conquered China, and he just became Chinese, basically. He lived in a traditional kind of Chinese way. But in Mongolian history, in Mongolia today, he's not looked on as a very important figure, because he basically became Chinese, right? He abandoned their ways. And in his time, people thought it was very controversial. They said, why is he living like a Chinese person? He should stick to the ways of his forefathers.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I might have a little bit of that kind of conflict in the story later. Yeah. That's neat. Pretty cool fashion, right, that they have?
Yeah, like the headbands and the
I wonder who
whole,
I'm sure if
they have lots of unique designs on their clothes too. Like, let's go back to the other page.
Yeah. Full color.
Let's see. No, not this one. Let's get rid of some of these. This one.
Neat.
Yeah, so these are like the designs they have
Whoa.
on their clothes,
That's
patterns like that.
Yeah.
They do have some color material too.
Uh-huh.
So this is going to be like the same colors that are on this
Yeah.
that are on.
And you do
this
something kind of
page.
different with the shading, right? The shadowing of this, like the light, the way the light is in this village
Yeah,
is different than the previous pages.
more of a purplish shadows on this one.
Neat.
So, yeah, now they're a little bit. Now they're coming out of a forest into the village.
So we talk about you can get Walter's
Oh, yeah.
Adventure.
Yeah, I think we can close up now.
Yeah,
and
and we can tell
finish
them.
up.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Finish.
this page will be out on the Patreon next week. And also, if you'd like to get a copy of Walby's Road Trip Adventure, you can find the link in the description box below. It's at my website, walbycomics.com. And also, if you'd like to see more of this comic, Caden and the Yak Thieves, you can see some of it, the first 11 pages, on my website, and more of it as it comes out on my Patreon. And all those links are in the description box below. So, thank you so much for joining,
Hope you
and
enjoyed.
we'll see you next time.